a program expense. An expense of $225,000 for programs, and I just wondered, Eric, did you give us the details on what that money was allocated for? We've only spent $778 of the $225,000, but I just wondered, is that something that this group needs to be aware of when we're talking about our plan right now?
I think that we could probably save going over that after we.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're okay. I mean, I just was wondering, what were we gonna be spending all that money on?
Well, we're gonna be talking about the
Yeah, we
budget
got
at
a budget
245, so I think let's have
Okay.
Eric look that up so he can answer that question when we get to that
Yeah,
topic.
I just thought, wow, that's a lot of money. Okay, great. Thank you.
So do we see this, in terms of the relation with the office itself, how do we see that going forward? Do we see it as general policy, like policy guidance, as you said, coordination? How do you see us being most valuable as the elected officials?
Given the limited experience that I personally have, I would not be an asset in anything other than a high-level review and coordination and taking that information back to the city to see what we can support and can't support, and, you know, I should not be in the day-to-day, what programs should be doing and shouldn't be
Sure.
doing and any of that,
Yeah.
because that's not my expertise. So I see us as much more of, and I did send out something that is just a role where we are seeing that the implementation of the legislative pilot program is done transparently and within budget, and the money's going to where it should be going, and that we can all agree on the direction that it's going, but much more of a high level, not individual programs and who's doing what and where the money's coming, you know. I think that that's better handled by the people that are more on the advisory group level, and then they can report to us on what they plan on doing. We can review it and determine whether that's appropriate in our view on the legislation and okay it maybe, you know, I assume to some degree, so that we can keep on task and move forward, but I don't see us hands-on at all.
Yes.
At least me.
No, I agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's a role.
Oh, looking on the county's website from what they have, I like the idea. It said, supporting shelter system capacity. When we were meeting the other day, with Eric King and Ben has a capacity system on what's available. And I honestly would like to see that from our, people that are running our program. I wanna know congregate, shelter beds, non-congregate, hotel rooms, and what, you know, I wanna know what is out there so that we, you know, we can see that we have made a lot of progress. And I feel like we're still really waiting for that. And then, you know, it seems like that was important. And then coordinating with the public land management agencies, because we've got China Hat, you know, you saw something else just happened in China Hat was that Friday or Thursday with the machete against some people. So China Hat definitely is bringing the Forest Service into our advisory group. So
And on that note, I think that what we also could do is when the executive director or staff person comes to us to make the reports on what activities are doing, then they could use us as, okay, where we're getting stumbling blocks is with Forest Service or with BLM or what, so we can be their advocates for, okay, how can we make this better? Do we need to talk to our legislatures? Do we need to talk to, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we're here in any way, shape, or form to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
We have fabulous providers who are working very hard in the field. I think that we were charged with finding the gaps, getting a central unified point to know about the number of shelter beds and availabilities and things. And, you know, we should be having those conversations through advisory panels with public safety officers, with our national parks and land Forest Service, BLM, any of those that are sharing in this problem, because it is a regional problem. But it is not, as you said, our job to go out there and roll up our sleeves and individually help one-on-one.
Yeah, what we do with our volunteer time is,
And there
is
you
our
go.
business.
And not
Yeah.
through the sport.
And I think also one of the ways that I have viewed this is, and our council structure is, we are liaisons to certain committees and commissions. And it is our job as that liaison to then report back to council and say, here's what's going on. And I think that we could be a source of information and resources for our respective councils and commission as well, in this role. Can we pull up that roles and responsibilities? I mean, because I think that if we've had this conversation a lot of like, what do, it's hard to see, I'm sorry. Gonna get my glasses on. What are our roles as a county, as service providers, as cities? And Nikki put together this really awesome diagram here. And then obviously you can see the intersections are where they change color. That's where they kind of intersect between, city and county, between service providers in the county, between the cities and service providers. And then in the center, you have the coordinated office. And I know you're just seeing this for the first time, but just wanted to see what you thought as you looked over it. Because I think we keep coming to this point of not understanding what our role is in this process. And yours is, I think, a good way of getting to that with this diagram. Just wanted to know what you thought.
Mikey, do you want to read that to us? Do you mind?
Which one?
Just the whole thing.
Oh, okay. So County and Cities Coordinated Houseless Response Office, Deschutes County and the cities of Bend, LaPine, Redmond, and Sisters established a collaborative office to help streamline the work of dozens of local organizations serving our regional houseless population, enabling a community-wide approach to addressing houselessness under a shared set of principles, priorities, and strategies. And so up top, you can see the core services the county provides. So that's health services, including behavioral health, mental health issues of substance use disorder, including homeless outreach, known as HOST, where Colleen Sinsky is supervising that team. You've got road, community development and building safety, justice, sheriff's office, assessors, 911, animal control. City's core function on the lower left usually are public safety, fire, police, street, water, sewer, and wastewater, economic development, planning and building safety, license and permit. And then if you go to the other side, lower right is supports and services. And these are all, we have approximately 65 supports and services in Deschutes County. They provide continuum of care. So that's HLC, outreach, case management, wraparound services. So that could be providing meals, shelters, transportation, and more. And then you can see in between that where there could be some collaboration. And where the CHRO could come in is break down the silos, because there's a lot of duplication of efforts, lead and orchestrate, streamline the efforts, and implement the strategic plan. And what we learned from the community strategic plan when we were developing that is that we needed somebody to lead, to help us orchestrate, and to help fill some of the gaps. So some of the gaps would be in like communication, public engagement, education, building trust and safety with the public, public buy-in. And then also with what I'm hearing a lot from you guys, data management. So that could be three things. Data management could be like centralizing the data with all our regional team and then sharing
That
that.
would be really outstanding.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
Really,
Amen.
like,
Yeah, and then,
yeah.
and then sharing it with each other.
Mhm.
Number two, it would be to do some data analytics. So when the electeds are making decisions, advisory board, anybody, it's based on data, and it's, it could help you when you're making decisions. And then the third thing is for public transparency and inclusion. So transparency, showing a public dashboard so the community could see the efforts that you all are working on. And then also inclusion so that the folks who are unhoused could also have this information. So things like that where there's gaps that this office could help with. So hopefully this diagram shows that.
No, it does. Thank you so much for reading it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, that was very kind of you.
What are your thoughts? Kathy, I felt very nice to look at it.
We've heard it, we've looked at it, yes.
Orchestrate,
Orchestrate.
orchestrate.
I like that.
That's orchestrate. Took me a minute. I was going, is that a foreign language? Orchestrate.
That was
It's cute.
that was from when, remember Deschutes County electeds and City of Bend were meeting and looking at the strategic plan. And we had Dawn Boone, who was showing you Houseless and Deschutes and narrating it. And she was saying, you know, we need to really have somebody who orchestrates everything that we're doing. And we might have too many people who are violinists, and we might need, you know, somebody on the piano as well, and somebody, you know, it's basically like a conductor, but it's not doing the work of a person playing the violin, or, you know, that sort of thing.
So again, going back to not having the duplication of service, breaking down those silos of this is mine to do, and getting those shared services.
Yes, yeah.
Do we have a strong sense that the 65 support and services organizations are willing to allow someone we elect to orchestrate them? Is there a power that this office needs to have, authority, power, whatever, that can say, well, maybe everybody isn't gonna agree, but jointly we're agreeing, kind of thing? I kind of worry about that aspect of it. I think that we need that, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we can want all the power and authority, but I don't know that was granted.
Yeah, yeah. it's not-
I do think having the advisory group made up of the key stakeholders is one of those missing pieces. But, you know, we really need to have more interaction and feedback from those people that are doing the work that we're supposed to be filling the gaps on. And I think if you have the support of that group, then the rest will likely follow, because the whole and the shared strategy, that would be our hope.
Yeah, I mean, what I like when I look at this is the areas that are shared, because I think a lot of the times that the county feels, I'm sure, different cities feel, service provider feels that we do this work in a silo, and that there isn't this collaboration, but there are a lot of opportunities and places that we can be collaborating, working together, and and things that we share, and that we share responsibility for as well. And so I think
Well, I think the county honestly has been working really hard on this problem for a couple of years. We were the ones that made the $900,000 investment into Bethlehem and Redmond. Commissioner Devon and I were really big into getting the Oasis Village land, and with more land around it, and something done because it's surrounded by county land, just to eliminate some of the conflict that we see. And you know, and what I believe we did allocate 1.5 million for Bend, of which that other 750,000 was just allocated to run the new program that just opened up. So yeah, no, we really, it's complicated, and yet I feel like we can really work together. And talking to some people this weekend, some people that really should have been part of this group, that I feel, I do remember in 19, I was down in Redmond upstairs at a homeless meeting, and there were like 60 people in the room. And someone went up to the front of the room and said, honestly, there's too many people in this room to really collaborate. I think we have to be incredibly respectful of where we need our help, but I don't think we want our advisory group to be too big.
And I agree, we don't want it too big, but I think there are people already doing this job.
Oh, right.
In the community, and I think it's a little bit arrogant to think that we need to reinvent that wheel when we don't have the experience or allocation, and our providers have already been doing it. So I think that that's one of the biggest steps that we've missed out or stepped on toes on, and I take responsibility as much as anybody. We need to reach out to our local providers and have that advisory group letting us know where those gaps are. Because we can look and see what we see as gaps from other information and other providers, but we really need a consensus among all. And I think that's what we need to do is be able to get that information and use it more thoughtfully.
yeah, I mean, the advisory board is definitely key component to this. I would actually, in doing some thinking about it, would like to broaden it even more, not just service providers, but also people in the whole continuum,
Yes.
people who do affordable housing, because there has to be somewhere to go after a shelter. And also, I would like to see, a few community slots open on this advisory board as well. I think that if we really want to work on engaging the public, I think that's a good way to do it. I know that Patty and I feel very strongly there should be someone from the Forest Service on the advisory board.
agree.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we haven't talked about with the advisory board that the task force felt very strongly about was having someone that understands how to get money. Because that is such an important part of unfortunately, being a service provider in our community is how do you get the money to do what you need to do? And the cities are going through that, the county's going through that. How do we get money to do what we want to do with homelessness? And so I think it would be nice to have, a spot or two on the advisory board for someone that is a subject matter on that.
Although some of the people on the advisory board are already doing it in their
Absolutely,
little, their
absolutely.
silo, but not necessarily in the
Yeah.
overall
But having
world.
someone that is their specialty and they
Right.
understand public funding, the grant process, other ways to create
To go to the
possible private
legislature,
partner
I mean,
business,
that's hard
yes.
stuff, and that's, can't expect that. It's unfortunately become the role of so many of our service providers, but we can't expect that that's just something that you know how to do, if you're working with the homeless in our community. Yeah.
Well, and then there's you guys, and then the other part of this, it's not only the homeless, but the Giving Plate just served 124 families on Friday. That was a new record. And how about, I feel that our team also has to be incredibly aware of people keeping them in their house. And just like there's a project in Redmond to make it into workforce housing, not at the, low barrier housing, but workforce housing, so that people actually don't become homeless. Incredibly part of the complicated issue that we in Deschutes County deal with on a daily basis. So, how can we get that housing going? But yesterday it was great. I ran into two of your two fellow commissioner or counselors and asked them about if they would do, the Veterans Village came to us asking for 150,000 for 7 more cabins. Now, their program is working. 12 of their veterans have moved on to housing. I think it's really outstanding. And they said, oh, Patty, no problem. It's capital. We could do that. So that's what they said yesterday. So, and then we can bring that back to the county because they want 150,000 from you, from the county, and from the community. And 7 more cabins. But we need them built now. So we need to get, whatever we can do to make those extra calls later today. So there's, the need is out there. It's a tremendous opportunity. And then I did hear, Oregon is the bottom of the nation for mental health, substance use disorder, residential treatment beds. Well, found out that we have someone on the national committee, and there is a rule that says you can only do 16 secure residential beds at a time. It ends up, that rule is from President Johnson's day. And and we have someone on the national committee who just met with Senator Wyden's office and Senator Wyden for an hour and a half. And they are actually looking at that number to change it. It would be so much better if we could do more of a help program with, like, let's say 64 beds or 48 beds or something instead of 16, which came from the Johnson era. I mean, this is something we've been talking about, or I've been talking about, and hopefully that project in Wasco can help our whole region if they can do their 42-bed facility. But it's not all secure. The secure has been limited to 16 since the 1960s. But getting to the bottom of things. So I really think it's important. The advisory committee, I know we're talking about interim next steps. Is that something that we can just right now come up with a list of people
I think
to
that,
invite, or do we need to?
I think we should bounce that back and forth, but I also, like I said, I feel like there are people that are already doing the work in the community, whether we wanna look at HLC or get a list from some of our larger providers who they think would be a good start. And then we do want someone in the behavioral health field, we need some
Absolutely.
public safety expertise.
And didn't we hear that they would prefer that we not make another meeting for them, another group.
No,
They would love us to have a same group, and it could be an item on their agenda at already existing meeting
Yeah.
would be their preference. I don't know if that's
I
gonna
mean,
work or not.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I also agree that this is a unique opportunity to be a little bit different of a group, you know, with some of these other seats on there. But yes, I know that is asking a lot of our service providers for sure.
but again, if they already have a group that's doing this, then all we have to do is
Can it
add,
be a
add one or two
subgroup?
Yeah.
people to their
Yeah.
seat. So let's just go back to HLC again. Maybe what we do is, can we get a forest service provider on there and make sure there's public safety, facility, behavioral health, or if they're not, if those seats aren't there, could they be there?
Mhm.
And then that would become the footprint.
Or it could be a Charles subgroup
Yeah.
that only meets, periodically when they
Right.
meet.
Right.
Sure. In the interest of time, because I know we have just a little over 10 minutes for this, I wanted to, and then I was hoping to kind of bring it all back at the end, but it was, we have the opportunity to speak with Tammy Vaney. Sorry to put you on the spot, about this host entity concept. And for those who may not be aware, we are gently exploring the idea of COIC being the host entity for the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. And was hoping, I know that you've had a couple of conversations, Tammy, if you felt comfortable just talking a little bit about it from a high level and how you might
Sure.
envision it, or.
Do you want me to join you or?
Sure.
Sure.
Of course. Thank you. So Tammy Vaney, Executive Director of CYC. As your region's Council of Governments, we represent all of you. And so it's a very natural conversation for us to have. Setting up something like this new is messy. And I just want to say thank you for sticking with it. If it were simple, I think that it would all have been, happened. We have so many providers in the community that are working really hard, as you've mentioned, to try to solve this issue. And so as your Council of Governments, we welcome the idea. Obviously, it's what do you need in order to feel supported? What meets the legislative intent and the legislative sort of restrictions. The work that we do is regional, and so we would hope that this is married nicely into that work as well. And I hear that in your comments and in the direction that you'd like to go as well. We work very closely with the HLC since we are the support entity for the continuum of care, which is the HLC. I've been texting Eliza. She unfortunately wasn't able to be here today, but I've taken some notes as well. I think that everything that you've brought forward definitely is worth a discussion. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of that and not duplicate efforts, because as you all just also mentioned, our providers are doing work today, and asking them to sit in more meetings when they're not serving and doing the work that they need to do. Many of them are the executive director and the fiscal agent and the grant writer and the bottle, delivery person of the whatevers. So thank you for the recognition of that. And the answer is, you bet. I mean, we're here to help and support what that looks like. As light of a touch as a fiscal sponsor, as heavy of a touch of supporting staff. We're open to the conversation. But I'm also happy to answer questions too if you have them.
So I was, I mentioned this in my email, but because we have an actual deadline of August 31st for the strategic plan, talked about sort of working backwards from there and what can we achieve by August 31st. And floated the idea of having a subgroup of two of us and one of them could be on governance, which is sort of what we just talked about for the last, half an hour or so, talking about what the governing board does, the roles and responsibilities, maybe touches on the advisory board, but also would be a subgroup that continues conversations with COIC about that, and then could bring it back to the board at our next couple of meetings before August. And just wanted to see what you all thought about that, just in terms of wanting to be able to be a little bit more limber in how quickly we move. We all have very busy schedules and it's hard to meet more frequently as one body. And so the idea of just having this subgroup. And
I'm good with that. I think that in order to get the work done, we're going to have to divide and conquer and get back together with notes and explain the reasoning to the rest of the board and hope that it makes sense to them and they'll follow that path. But if we all sit here and try to work through every step until August, we'll be meeting every single week.
Yeah.
And we may need to meet every other week as it is.
And one of the things that we might want to talk about in the future, particularly if we are in this, transitions are always good, right, for lessons learned, is we had talked about at the very beginning of this office creation about maybe the board sort of changing and morphing in terms of how much of a presence does each city or the county want to have on this board. So that may be a conversation that we can have in the future. We had even talked about it, it being based on, how much financially are you putting into the office once the pilot, runs out, the pilot money runs out. But also maybe just how involved are you as a city in sort of creating these new, shelters and opportunities for people to exit homelessness. So that's just another thing to think about, I think, in the future as we move forward. Are there any questions for Tammy or thoughts or concerns?
I would hope that this would end up being a regional program long-term. And so I see COIC as a good conduit for doing that. Because so much of the funding and the organizational structure is already tri-county. So hopefully it will morph in that direction. So I'm not sure how particularly capable I am of doing what you're suggesting to be done. How much more detail are you talking about a subcommittee preparing to bring back? How much, what would it look like?
Well, with this subgroup, I think, the idea is just to continue the conversation with COIC and staff, about how this actually could work. I was gonna ask, could we, I guess one of the questions is that physically moving it over to COIC, what does that entail in terms of our IGAs, in terms of how the office set up? And then should the office become regional and not just Deschutes County, what does that entail in terms of the legislation and
Impact our funding from the governor's.
Exactly. Is there, does anyone?
I can touch on
Yeah,
that.
sure.
We do that a lot. So we take on certain projects for one city, one county, the region. And so we can very easily separate your funding. We can dedicate your funding to whatever staffing resources that, since we don't have a tax base, all of our funding is grant and contract driven. So we, capture by the hour already. So we very easily, if we have staff that is supporting you, we can easily capture that. If you have staff that we're supporting as well, we already have a mechanism in place to do a lot of that. It's really, what do you need? And then allowing us to back into that. I think the biggest piece is that we are nimble. And so as you explore what this might look like in the future, you can have that move as you need it to be, since, it's really, the relationship is with partners that are already aligned.
But we would have to redo our IGAs.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yes, yep.
But I just kind of see that as, we just decide that that's the way we want to go or we don't want to go.
Yeah.
And let the players work out the organizational situation. I don't know what a subcommittee of just two of us could really bring to the table, other than
Well, I think it's more than that too. I think it's sort of continuing this work of our governance and what that means, and sort of delving into that a little bit more, because I still don't think we talked about it, but I don't think we fully have really, said like, this is what we're going to do as a board. This is how we're going to stay aligned. This is how, we're going to operate. I think it's we've never really had that conversation. And I think in just doing some of that work on the side and maybe coming up with some ideas for the advisory board, or just
Well, and as we look at maybe restructuring and at this whole picture, that does change how we're gonna change the role of governance as well, because we're going to have a different interaction with COIC than we would if we had just had one single executive director juggling all those balls in the air. So it does make it a more important conversation to revisit and hash out, and it's part of the strategic plan that we have to have in August.
And don't forget, we do share Chris with COIC.
Well, but just give
Yes,
him back.
we
extended
bought
hours.
his, we are buying his time back as well, so, and I've been in
Right.
close communication with Chris, so,
Good times.
Where's the exit?
we're fortunate to have him as a
He's
resource.
excellent.
Yes.
Right, Chris.
Thank you all.
If I could just offer, the other benefit of
Yes.
having a committee to really dive into the governance is, it's not the formal board meeting. We could really dive into the details. We could really coordinate with Tammy and your team and the cities and the partners to say, here are some different options of what the governance structure might look like. And then come either with a recommendation to this board or to our respective boards and elected bodies, whomever it may be, with a really informed either recommendation or options. And that structure then would address, is it regional, does it remain with Deschutes County? Maybe COIC could still lead it if it's just Deschutes County, but that would be a decision that would come out of that. It would be roles and responsibilities. It could and should, as you were mentioning, Councilor Perkins, it should include the operating aspects of it. So the bylaws, what is, are there annual elections for officers? Are there, how are decisions made? How frequently does the board meet? There are a lot of things that would come out of the governance subcommittee that would really be a strong benefit.
If I might add, probably most important is also making sure that we're driving the outcomes and making sure that we're being accountable to what it is that we need to be doing, which is a lot of the planning that we do, the data collection, analysis, and working to make sure that we're doing that on behalf of the number of other projects is certainly is one that we want to be involved in.
Saying that,
Yes, exactly.
very important. Well, thank you. How do you feel, Patty, about transitioning over to the interim director conversation, based on what we have been talking about?
Oh,
Might
it's
flow a little bit better, is that?
yeah, I
okay
think
with
so.
you?
Seems appropriate.
We all know, and this is no fault of any government agency, but hiring is not easy and is not quick. And I think that, I'm sure we all agree that we don't want to lose any steam, especially at this really important place we are in time right now, with the strategic plan and implementation plan. And wanted to discuss with all of you what an interim director or even the interim leadership team could look like for the next few months while this process goes forward with hiring. And again, it may take even longer, especially if we're transitioning over to another, going from the county to COIC, should that be the case. And so this person might need to be in there, or this team might need to be in there for a matter of months. Do you have any questions or thoughts, or what do you?
No, I'm
What are
just
you
looking at you.
thinking? You're just looking at me?
You're just talking, I'm writing it down, interim team. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and and one of the team concept is that, if we're to ask someone, it's some, let's say a local service provider or something to be an interim director, to say, hey, quit your job, become an interim director, but we can't guarantee that you'll have this job, and then you don't have a job, so the idea of a team guiding the process rather than just maybe one person was just something that we had thought of as a.
Well, and I think there's a benefit to that. I mean, because if we have a team, we can do that variety of, this is a provider, this is a public safety person or behavioral health person. We can get those pieces together and have them each helping in, whether it's governance, leadership, peer support. We can definitely take that task and make it more manageable instead of one person diving in, and then the benefit of team and local providers, and I think Patty helped me figure this out, is they're already known entities.
Mhm.
So I think that's important because people in the continuum of care already know these people and are working with them. And again,
And I think the other important thing that we really have to acknowledge is that we need someone that the community trusts. And I know that I personally trust Chris because I remember working with him before. And it's wonderful to have him back again. But I know also that Colleen Thomas was one of the high scoring candidates for our original quest for the director. And she's fortunately still working for Deschutes County. She has incredible trust out there in the community with the service providers. I know she probably doesn't have an ounce of time, but maybe if some of her other little positions could be cleared away, she could be part of that interim team. I just really feel like we need to acknowledge trust needs to be, there were people that were never listened to for a while, and I just don't want that ever happening again. Because we've all got to come together, collaborate, and it is summer. So that's just,
Trust is, you're right, I think that's really important.
and yes,
She's well respected in our community and I'm sure in yours as well.
oh, she's here, she's extremely well respected here in Deschutes County. She's been with us for how long, Eric?
I can look it up.
Okay, good. Anyway, I mean, that's just somebody that I just,
I think trust is good, and I think that that's part of it, but again, getting the balance of all those pieces, people who are skilled in each of these little areas that we need to bring together and offset and balance this out while we transition into the actual role of this board and where it's gonna be hosted. So I wanna make sure that it's fluid and that we're not taking them away from a job that when it comes down to it, we may have one person, 3 people, or, you know, do something totally different, because I don't know that that's come out of what we've discussed yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that was another subgroup that I had
Exactly.
proposed, was to have a couple of our members really look into this, what an interim director or leadership team would look like, who would be on it and help maybe work with staff from our respective cities or in the county also to kind of just to help with that process, so that we can get a group or, you know, however that looks, there soon, to really work on the things that we know that we have to do. And maybe, you know, really, one of the things that we've talked about is like limiting the scope of this interim director or leadership team, you know, position, like the strategic plan, the implementation plan, get an advisory board, like the things that we actually have to do as part of this legislation with pilot funding, as opposed to, you know, hey, run the office now, you know, but just say this is what we need out of this position, or.
And that makes the most sense, because technically we have 45 plus or minus days to execute a strat plan for the governor's order. So I think that if we divide into that and have very specific tasks coordinated with the team and maybe a staff mentor and help to make sure things are getting well documented and done, then that would be the way to move forward.
Councilor Perkins, if I may offer, city managers, Eric King, Keith Witowski, and our teams, Eric Croft, Chris, we haven't spoken, but I know you've been involved, and certainly Mickey Durning, we're ready, willing, and able to step in to provide that support for the leadership team going forward immediately so that we don't miss a beat. And then if it allows more time to identify or determine, is there an interim director? And if so, what does that look like? Just for your comfort and confidence, please know we're here, ready, willing, and able to support the program going forward immediately. We understand the importance of this.
Thank you. So maybe we can, at the very end of all this, sort of talk about the subgroups and who would like to be on them. But I want to make sure that we have enough time to, because we never quite get to the strategic plan at every one of our meetings. And it's becoming more and more urgent as we get closer to our now August 31st date. Could we put on that action plan on the screen? That one pager, possible? Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
And we're back.
There. I guess I know that you've all looked through it. I see you have edits and all that. But I guess just to start with, could we maybe go through each of the priority sections and just maybe talk them through one by one, just to make sure, I mean, before we even decide how we're gonna go forward with this, I think it's important to really, are we okay with these being the priority areas? And understanding as we're looking at these, what our roles, respective roles may be as cities and a county in this. Some of these things are gonna be HLC, some of these things are gonna, in different areas, but just from a very high level way, are we okay with the responsibilities that our communities, our individual communities are going to be responsible for under this? And I guess the first one is engage the whole community. And we've, talked about this a lot. And received a little bit of pushback on it, about whose role is it to engage the community. And the task force felt very strongly that sure, it's all of our roles, but that's one of the things that this office can do as well, is really help engage the community. And you can kind of see a few different priorities there, but just wanted to know what you thought about community orientation.
Let's first spell it correctly in there. I don't know if you can get to it or not, but and according to this, so there's 2 of the items, 3 and 4 have been, they have a date by them, their target date, is that really true?
Well, no, because we don't have an advisory group.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
When were these dates set? Do you know?
That was spring of 2022.
Yeah.
so that's before all this happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to remove that one, December of 22.
Yeah.
For item 3, orientation is spelled wrong, and a flexible community fund. Okay, well, that's definitely a wish to get funding.
You have copies for those of us who have come to listen?
Yeah, they're right there at the end of the table. Oh, actually, there's not copies of this specific.
I have an extra copy. Do you want mine?
I would love it, thank you.
It's sort of a one-page cheat sheet of a very
Yes.
big document.
So a little backstory on this didn't come out of this original office, this actually was the HTF, and they were doing this plan prior to, and it's actually very on par with what was tasked to this office. And this goes back to, okay, this was a much more linear and more fluid document, so we're starting back with something that's easier than 44 pages of a lot of stuff that doesn't itemize.
Exactly, yeah, that's why I like that the word action is at the top.
So,
Yeah, and again, it goes back to like, who's doing what, and are we okay with?
yeah, so we're
This
massaging
conceptually.
this, dates will roll and change.
Yes.
The flexible community fund, I'm not sure that's under the engage the whole community, I'd probably take that out of there. That's gonna go into when we're establishing services for people that are at risk of homelessness, that's us working with our providers, so it's probably under the wrong.
So move that
I
one
would agree
down.
with that.
I think it goes to priority 3,
Yeah,
I do.
I think that's a good.
Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
So where's the master then? Who has,
I have it.
okay, good, okay.
I'll definitely fix the misspelling and then move it around. I'm looking
Okay.
for it right now, so I could do it live.
Great, thank you. So then, do we have any more comments on the first one, priority 1?
And how. The task force felt it was, that this is really vital to our community, to have this. I love that they call it orientation, I think that's really great, because sometimes I feel, and I'm looking at one of the service providers in our room, but I think orientation is a nice way. A lot of people don't understand, right, how services work in our community, or what it means to be homeless, or and so I think that this group, which had a lot of service providers on it, really felt like that was something that we wanted to have as, obviously as a one of the 5 priorities for this strategic plan.
So are we listing these priorities in the order of importance for this? Okay, because
I don't think it was an importance.
Okay, because that's just, I would rotate some things
It's just
that
their
were
plan.
said.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2.
So 2, so then 2 is
We're
this
doing.
collaborative office.
Okay, so why does, it says tenure, but I believe our, it's really a 5-year plan, what we're dealing with.
And again, this wasn't our
No, I know,
original,
I'm just
so yeah,
saying
so
that's
we
what
would
we
need
need
to
to change.
rotate this into that,
Yeah.
yes.
It should go to 5 then.
So, and Tammy, when you do the sorry, my mind just blanked, the region, home, I totally forgot the title of it, with the,
Regional housing needs assessment.
you did a 10-year, thank you, High Desert Home, thank
Yes.
you, regional home. Is that 10-year or 5-year or is,
Well, it's about ready to have a refresh of
Yes.
whatever we need it to be.
okay,
So
so,
it started as a 10-year plan to
Okay.
end homelessness, then was refreshed in 2015.
okay,
And back me up here if that, and it was,
That's the last.
that was the last that it's been refreshed.
okay,
Hence, one of the reasons that we are supporting HLC to make sure that that planning
sure.
continues. And so it wouldn't be a 10-year, 5-year, it'd be a rolling,
Yeah.
you know, updated live.
Mhm.
Okay.
But I like when I see plans, I like to have, 1 year, 1 year it looks like this, and 2 years this, 5 years and 10 years, these are the goals and
But 4123 does say 5 years.
it does say 5 years.
Yes,
Okay.
it clearly says 5 years.
So I think
If
that-
we're doing 4123
Yes, we are.
and we want to pass their inspection, I say say 5
We
years.
want the shiny gold star, we're gonna do a 5-year, but back to what Councilor Perkins was saying, I really do appreciate when we have in our strat plan, if we can break it out, we've kind of already gone through year almost 1 in our phasing, so I would like to see, more hard set metrics of 2, 3, 4. Because as we count down at the end of year 2, we will be assisting the funding of this office and its goals, so we really need to know what that looks like, and that becomes, I think, more critical.
Yep. And going back to priority number 1, if the public sees this is what we want to do in 2, 5, 10 years, whatever, that helps the public understand what we're doing. Because a lot of the times, like, what are you doing for homelessness? We don't understand, and I think that will help having those metrics for sure.
Okay.
Everybody likes data, everybody likes metrics. Well, I do, but-
No, sad, it's an addiction.
Is there anything, I think we talked about the funding already and how important that is to align, and like you said, eventually we would be supporting this office,
That's the funding and alignment.
potentially. Get rid of the dates probably.
Well, I think there are dates in the House bill that we'll have to meet for our metrics, and then we need to establish internal dates so that that's when we can go back and are we meeting our metrics? Do we need to have a reboot? And take that data from our providers and see if we're on task.
Mhm.
And that might be more a little fluid, but that would certainly help us to know that we had some targets to look at.
Okay, so since we're on a time schedule, but we're going to get through this one, so priority 2, are we okay with priority 2s? Other
Yes,
than-
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go down to priority 3 then. We're targeting,
This one's more complicated. Yeah.
okay, so service funding plan. 150 permanent supportive housing units. Now, where is that coming from?
The task force.
Yeah, we need to align that with the governor's order of what permanent supportive housing.
Okay, how many
units we need.
housing units did the executive order say? And do we need to put that in here, because that's really for all 3 counties? Remember?
Permanent supportive housing is not mentioned in the executive.
Okay, it's not
rapid rehousing.
rapid
What?
rehousing, thank
Rapid
you,
rehousing.
rapid rehousing.
So do we need to change it to rapid rehousing?
Well, it's
Those
different.
are different.
It's different. I think what we might need to do is come up with, do we need 150 permanent supportive housing units and a funding plan? That comes back to, is that,
This was really for Bend, was it not? 150?
no,
It was for the region, or for Deschutes County.
for Deschutes County? I would imagine we might need to relook at the numbers just to see what that looks like, and then we need,
I think it was a drop in the, we need it was hundreds and hundreds, right? Jim, I'm looking at you, Jim.
yeah. we
Yeah,
did.
of permanent support housing. This was just one of the things that we kind of grabbed at
Dropped
to
in the
say we
bucket.
have to make,
This
an
is
effort
for-
in
okay.
in this area. But
And it
you're
was
right.
by June 23, so it was
Yeah.
assumed that was just a start. That was just through.
Permanent support housing is.
So we're
very
talking about the Cleveland Commons, which are really,
Yes.
what is only 30-some
Yeah.
units? Yeah,
It's
for millions of dollars that we have, the county did contribute to that.
Yeah, so that's a question, is do we want to align some of this with where the governor would like us to align, considering that's where a lot of the funding is coming from. that might be
I
something we
think
wanna
in
tackle.
coordinating, and that's the key word, in coordinating and supporting, we need to be looking at the things they are tasked with, because that's where I think our help and coordination is gonna come with. So we might want to try to align some of those numbers, and I'm not saying we need to be as limited or as broad, we need to look at what we think is obtainable
Mhm,
and then either match or exceed.
mhm.
Okay, so we're gonna have to relook at that number, but I think the idea is right.
I think, yeah, maybe we take out the actual number and say just, the explore,
Explore permanent support
Or
housing
housing.
funding plan, and
Yeah.
then we might actually have to put something in there regarding rapid rehousing, since that's one of the things that they are definitely being tasked with.
Mhm.
That's where I think we need to be more fluid, because again, in a supportive and coordinating role, that's our job, is to help them get to the finish line.
Mhm. Yeah, and another thing that I know is in the plan, but we don't, is keeping people that are on the edge from becoming homeless. And so whether that's exploring funding for, rental assistance or whatnot, I think that's also something that, the governor is, feels very strongly about and is, looking to fund, so we should probably consider that.
Yeah, and I know we can always use more funding. I know that the funding that does come in, and I think it goes, maybe it's allocated through neighbor impact, but it's 6 months and gone,
Yeah.
and it seems like such a large number,
Yeah.
so.
It's cheaper to give a few $100s for a rent than it is to get someone
Yeah.
out of homelessness, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so item number 3, behavioral health funding. I mean, honestly, the behavioral health funding, the county, we have 412 people now in our health department, employees, full-time employees. So behavioral health funding, what is it in addition to what all the grants and things we're doing? Who else is gonna be on top of that besides Deschutes County?
Do we need behavioral health funding, or actually do we need behavioral health beds? Because in my mind, what we're lacking
Is
is
beds.
the beds.
Right,
And that goes back to having that gap and filling it for our providers, where these people need this service, and to have it, they have to have a supported bed,
Mhm.
and we don't have them. So maybe that's what we need to look at
I
there.
like that idea. I think the beds really, they've always been the critical thing. We did write a letter of support for children for behavioral health beds, but beds definitely.
Yeah.
I think the county is really on top of behavioral health funding. But beds, no, we need help.
Yeah, and the more beds will come with additional costs.
Yeah.
Right,
So it's,
So yeah, it's kind of both. As
Right.
we create more beds, we'll need more funding. So maybe we need to look at the allocation of creating necessary beds and research supported funding,
Mhm.
because we're gonna need more.
Mhm.
so Chris, you got all that?
And I think, yeah, I mean, but I think the barriers that was an important part of this section as well. Why aren't people, it's not just a matter of there's not enough beds, sometimes it's a matter of, there are other things that play here, so I think that was what they were trying to
they-
address as well.
Yes, and also some of that is, there's no incentive
Mhm.
for many people to seek behavioral health. So that's a whole nother political aspect and goal to have somebody tackle, and we can help support out of this office, but
Right, such as what Mayor Fitch said, to reverse measure 110.
measure one day. It's the biggest problem we have right now is there's no incentive to quit a habit that keeps you happier in your circumstance.
That's for sure.
Behavioral and mental health are combined, they are not separated. And when you talk about behavioral health, you also talk about mental health. It's mental health that drives behavioral health.
Okay, so item number 4, expand case management and rebuild the social service sector workforce. Any,
Yeah, I mean, this was basically
that's an, the county is always working on that for us, But then again, you see that Rimrock only has 6 beds open for the teenagers over in Prineville because they have the capacity for 24 beds. They only have a staff, so they have 6 beds available for teenagers that have problems.
And that goes back to the behavioral health funding.
Right.
You know, just. for
Well, it
county,
goes
not-
back to the workforce.
And well, that's part of what you have to fund and train. I think part of one of the tasks somewhere in our goals is to help with that support of trained and support individuals, whether it's the help in hiring a shared PT or FTE or what we need to do to make it happen.
I like the peer support expansion a lot. I mean, we see how successful with rehabilitation it is to have peers guide you through the process. I think having a peer approach to service provision is also really valuable and a great way to expand the services that we're able to offer as a community. So,
I agree. It's actually
Is
critical.
that something we feel like the coordinated office should provide, or that we would assist service providers in expanding their peer support?
I think it goes back to that training portion of it and the support. I don't know if we're going to do the expansion, but through this office, if we had to help create a fund for training of an individual or look at that, I don't know if that's something we want to investigate. I know other counties have in their plan, in their shared provisions, helping those people fill those gaps by helping support that training. And I don't know if that's something we need to look at or we need to put that back out and off this list. I'm outside of my scope a little bit.
yeah, I mean, 4 and 5 could sort of fit into the collaborative office, coordinated office.
I think correct.
It's basically-
Actually, I would move 4 and 5 from 3 down to the collaborative office or up.
You mean moving them up to 2?
Is that the collaborative office?
Yeah,
Is
two
that
is
the-
the-
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Collaborative
I'm 4
office.
and 5 up there, yes. Because that would be another way that we could support our providers. And I think that's what we're talking about is what level of support should we be providing to them to broaden their ability to offer services.
Right, and then 6, 7, 8, and 9.
I would like to, in case we don't have time to finish
Yes.
all of this, indicate that a lot of things in here say that, and you pointed it out, which I appreciate, is that it says cities will do this. Well, in order for me not to have to take this back to the city council, we need to change that language because we are not currently, nor will we do in the near future, some of the things that it says, cities will do this. So it either needs to spell out the cities of so and so will be, are doing.
Well, and none of us as individuals can speak for our cities. So
Right,
anything
but
that is gonna
I
do a
don't think we want
collaboration-
this to go back to the city councils for approval. Or we're gonna have another 2 months before we have a strategic plan.
Yeah, but Eric, I mean, I guess that leads to the sort of the implementation plan, the concept. I mean, I think that's sort of getting into the actual implementation. I think I view the strategic plan and this action summary as sort of just a real high level. This is how it should go. And then the implementation is, okay, this is how it's actually going to be implemented into specific communities. I don't know if that.
Well, I know that my folks will read that the cities will do this and they'll say, well, you haven't done it.
Yeah.
And you've agreed to do this
Yeah.
in the strategic plan.
Yeah.
And when are you gonna do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be no, oh, well, that was high level thinking, that wasn't implementation. So if it says we are going to do something, I have to take it back to the city council and say, are we willing to do this? Or I can't approve this strategic plan. And I don't know that we want to wait for that process to
Sure.
happen.
Yeah, I totally understand
So
that.
is it helpful as we finish the plan and submit it to the state by the end of the summer to have at least a conceptual implementation plan so that everybody understands how this plan will be implemented as we've discussed at the staff level? Would that be helpful to?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's
Excellent.
gonna be really important for comfort levels. Going back to our bodies, yes, for sure. are there, if we're looking at this as conceptual, you know, this is sort of the more, not pie in the sky, but like, this is just a little bit more, in a dream world, we could subsidize transportation, we could, you know, I mean, and coordinated entry is obviously not pie in the sky, that's something that we need to support, you know, every day, but.
Well, transportation honestly is, I think Tammy would agree with me, it's so subsidized now that definitely.
True.
I always tell people, if we find a spot like the 12 acres for Oasis Village, somehow we can get a bus route with proper channels followed, that we can get a bus route out there and getting those people to town. So the bus transportation, I don't think we have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Well, just
coordinated
in just
entry
any
should
form
be
of
left.
transportation, I mean, it seems.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even like I told the shepherd's house in Redmond that's coming in, I go, please do not have those people crossing the highway. I go, let's get a bus that can come in there. I just don't want to hear about somebody getting hit on Highway 97. You know, it's just, it's not safe there. And so, anyway, I know we have
But is
nimble buses.
Is it taken care of? Is there a bus coming to Lapine and coming to Sisters and picking people up?
Right.
Before we say this is gonna happen everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very good.
Well, it has
I
been
mean,
happening.
this is very much Bend.
If we have
centric
bus drivers,
and
it will
Redmond
happen.
centric.
You're right.
Yeah.
So really, when we're going back to these, and again, it says priorities, it's strategic plan. These are things we hope to accomplish and evolve. These are not things set in stone. These are things wrought with peril, can fail, can succeed, but they're the overarching goals that we want to make sure that we're looking at when we're moving forward. So in a perfect world, we would really love to have the subsidized transportation available in all of these places. In reality, we know how transportation plans work, and we might get something this year, it might be 3 years. You know, we work the numbers and the magic until we get some of that to happen, but it never all happens at once. And it
Right,
certainly
but the
doesn't.
language in this is not aspirational.
Yeah.
It's action
Yeah.
items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very different
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
we would hope this will eventually evolve
Yeah.
into this.
Okay, and one thing, this prevention and diversion program number 9,
Mhm.
is there any way to help people that have skills but need some more skills? That they can be referred to those training possibilities, such as, you know, I know at Oasis Village, they're gonna be able to train people. Is there any way to add that to that line? You know, there's service providers, counties, prevention and diversion, well, also working, how can we help these people that do have some skills get back to actually working if they're capable? I'd love to see that on this page somewhere, and I don't know exactly where it fits, but
Well, okay, so again, is that one of our goals, to create the jobs, or just to find the people in place who are gonna offer
find
those
the people in place
services?
where they can do it. But I'm just saying it should be, it's
Yeah.
important.
No,
Yeah, it is very.
that makes sense.
So-
How could we fit that?
Well, it would be under the expanding services.
Yeah.
You know, this could even be for people that are experiencing homelessness due to previous experiences that gave them felonies or whatnot, and now they can't get into certain jobs and training without a lot of help, get through rental assistance. So maybe supportive, what is the word I want?
Well, honestly, this can apply to people that are on the verge of going homeless,
Well,
and
just like
keep them in their
2000
job,
yeah,
keep
just-
them in a job that pays the
Or
bills.
create a job, just like in 2008, when all of a sudden, all those contractors needed to be rehomed into other jobs.
Right,
So I think that, you know, we just need to find the correct phrasing for that, and then obviously, you know, probably partner with COCC and some other people and some skills training.
Heart of Oregon, whatever it
Part of
takes.
Oregon.
I agree.
Okay,
All right, well, in the interest of time, should we go down to 4?
Yes.
yes, let's do 4 and then,
So obviously, we know the numbers for of unsheltered in Deschutes County, the percentages are well over 70% that are unsheltered. It wasn't that different when we were, it was a little bit higher, I think, when the task force was coming up with the strategic priority. But when we have a vast majority of our homeless still living unsheltered, that was the reason why this is a large section of the strategic plan.
Oh, item 2 on priority 4, hygiene, it needs to be respelled. Thank you. And you saw that Portland now is going to be moving 500 people off their streets. So just something more to be concerned with. So the quality by name list data source,
That's
number 8.
in process right now with the homeless leadership.
Do you mind if I ask, how do you envision us, the coordinated office, completing like 4.1 through 4.4 there? Those
And those are not.
those feel like direct services.
Those are direct services, so I think we need, I'm looking at this whole thing, I think a lot of this is the support of service providers. So what we need to do is create the support function so that they can provide these things, and so in doing that, how do we support items 1 through 4 to them? Is it a financial support, is it a service provider support, is it a warehouse
Coordination.
support?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of item more so, because again, those are not direct services that would be provided through this office.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
Item 5, by name list coordination.
So I think 5 and 8 can be combined into one.
Absolutely.
I just think there's a redundancy in there. We're gonna do it one time and do it
Yeah.
right.
And the HLC, well, look. It's already working on that.
Okay, when will it be done? Does anybody have an answer?
The by name list is kind of a fluid.
Right.
Say it could it ever be done?
Yeah, so there isn't technically a done, but we're definitely still have room to improve there for sure.
Still room
So it
to,
just says will be an integral part of the service system and just get.
I think the key things of the by name list is that it's a list that's universally accessible by our providers, instead of each provider has a separate list that they don't align and don't coordinate, and then services either get cross duplicated. So I think that would be the importance of it.
so we're talking about when they can access this, they can do that even with HIPAA laws and everything.
I don't think it'd be a list that'd be like generally available to the public,
Right.
but I think to providers, yes.
Okay, so they can have a special code and get in it and,
Yeah, generally the by name list is meant to be a tool that helps track folks that are entering and exiting homelessness each month. And in an ideal world, it's a dynamic list, right? It's not like the point in time count is a static list. It's one night of the year. In an ideal world, we get the by name list to a satisfactory point to where that can be used rather than the point in time count.
Okay, looking at the clock. Do we have anything on strategic priority 4 that we'd like to make notes on?
I think we can remove number 9.
Yes, because I think
all the cities have addressed their camping in time and place.
Yeah, I had that marked off as well.
Let's see, shared process, I like, that goes back to the
that too.
shared, so we can leave that.
processes though is spelled wrong,
It is.
I think. Is it processes?
Well,
It is.
Scott, yeah,
somebody,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm really blurring at this distance,
Yes.
but I see an extra couple letters in there.
couple of S, yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Shelter fund and operations plan. Is that
I don't
something
think
we're
that's.
still?
I think what I would like to see this office do is have the ability to help providers build a funding and operational plan, give them the tools. I don't think it is our job to create
Right.
the funding of the plan, but very much like anybody who's going to coordinate and lead, you want to give them the tools to do their job the best. So maybe that needs to be massaged into
maybe
that.
that goes, what do you think about that going with sort of that workforce section in a way too? Because I mean, to me, it directly, yes, it's about funding, but also it's about building capacity, which we know we so desperately need.
I think that might be a really good tandem to that. I agree.
And item number 12, the shelter availability.
There it is, Patty, that's yours, right there.
That's
the
my,
one you
that's
want.
what I've been like going, what
Yeah.
is really going on
Yeah.
here?
I think it's
And what
really
is
important to
really
understand that.
working?
Yeah.
Like, I keep asking, I keep
Well, and that's
wondering.
part of the coordination. I think in working with all of our providers, we do need to know, where are they, do they have beds? Are they experiencing weird and wide vacancies when other people are overcrowded, so that we can actually find out what's working, what's not, and redirect and reallocate as needed.
Okay,
Last one is about affordable housing. As we know, is very important. I know the city of Bend has a goal, a council, a goal for our upcoming biennium about the 0 to 30 AMI prioritization.
oh, I just had a question about the use of the word deeply affordable.
I would take that out.
Yeah, I was
but
like, for affordable. Yeah, I was thinking like
It's
deeply,
it's
it didn't
not
make,
relevant.
quite make sense.
If we're talking about housing, we need to talk about it in terms of AMI 0 to 30%, 30 to 60 or 65, and then 80
I
and
agree.
above.
Much more.
Yeah, I don't, it's a misnomer to call it workforce housing if we're doing 0 to 30. There's not,
Okay,
workforce housing, it'd almost have to be
I
up to
think-
120.
okay, guys, we need to look at the budget now, it's after 2:35.
Can I just ask for clarification?
Yes,
To this point, I've heard support for a governance subcommittee or work group. I've heard support for a leadership subcommittee or work group. Is there a third subcommittee or work group around refining this document based on what we've talked about today, as well as drafting a conceptual implementation plan? It just, so we have clear direction going
How do you
forward.
all feel about having another group that would do some of the background work to bring to the next couple of meetings before we submit it?
we need it before the next meeting, definitely, so that we,
I'm in favor.
yes, sounds good.
I think those are the 3 priorities to take away from today, to get us on track for that August date.
Would it be helpful to have a motion to create these subgroups?
Yes. I said yes. I was gonna say yes. You beat me to it.
Okay,
was
I
yes.
so move to create the 3 subcommittees as described for
Which were,
governance.
Governance, leadership, and strategic plan, or we can just leave it broad.
I like it broad like that.
I'll second that.
okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
I
Opposed? Okay, motion going forward then, we will have 3 subcommittees.
And in terms of who's on it would be helpful as well.
Yeah.
From
That's something
Let's
you
do
wanna
that
think
at the
about?
end really
Yeah,
quickly so
okay,
we can
let's
get
get
to
to
the
the budget.
budget
Let's get to the
and because that's probably critical, and then I will just throw myself under the bus in the meeting.
Okay. Budget, it's attachment F.
Yes.
yes, I think that's what.
Sure, could you please?
Yes.
Oh, off the top of the head, do you know how many units were in Cleveland Commons? Was that like 36?
Mid-30s, yeah.
City.
Okay.
32 or 37.
Yeah.
But you're right,
There's
it's
the sun, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
well,
somewhere between 32.
it's somewhere between 32 and 36.
Yeah.
It's a movie.
Okay, I mean, I was just thinking.
I think
okay.
you're right in that realm.
It's like, what is it?
36.
KPVZ says 36 as of 2021, so subject to
Thank
change.
you very much.
We will treat them as the resident expert.
We can.
All right, so yes,
So
all right, go
So
ahead.
the budget, it's in the county's budget structure, it's Fund 205. What you see in your board packet is 2 pages. You start out with the resources, you see the $1 million that came from the state. And then the next category is personnel services. What is being proposed in next year's budget is the same 2 FTEs that are in the current year. And then the specific question about that line item program expense, that was just a placeholder for future expenditures. There's really no planned expenditures at this point for that. That's just a placeholder because that $1 million will be spent down but carries forward. And then the other kind of area for future expenditures is where we see that reserve for future expenditures. So really the program expense is if the board wanted to send $10,000 to a service provider to do a certain service, then that could come out of there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so really it's,
Helpful.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. Where did the last director's $7,500 move, where was that put into the budget?
I'll have to look at that for that.
Cause I don't see it here.
I'll have to drill down to some of the line items.
Thank you. All right,
I'm
so,
sorry, if I may, would it be okay if I mention something regarding the 150 permanent supportive housing that's in the strategic plan?
Yes.
So I call this the community-based strategic plan. It used to be Emergency Homelessness Task Force. And the folks that were on it were like the Deschutes County Homelessness Leadership Coalition, Housing Works, Redmond, City of Bend, Central Oregon Veterans Outreach, Bethlehem Inn, Shepherd's House, Central Oregon Fuse, the Helpers Neighbor Impact, law enforcement, we had Sheriff's Office, we had City of Bend Police, Mosaic Medical, Reach, Oasis Village, JBAR Youth, Pacific Health, St. Charles, and then we also went through a lot of afterwards meeting with other community members who were not part of the Emergency Homelessness Task Force. And that 150 number was something that they all collectively came up with. And if you think about it, right now we have I think 1,000 unsheltered in Deschutes County. The governor's order covers like 111 and whatever we have in the pipeline, we still have about 800 plus maybe unsheltered that we need to cover. And they did come up with 150 permanent supportive housing number. And I just received a text from one of the members that said, yes, that is a good number, validating that. So just for your consideration to keep it, if you will.
so really, we're looking, because we have 36 already in the queue, we are looking at 114 then. That's out there.
But that's our number.
But I
That's
would
a
leave the
local number,
150
not a.
number, knowing that that's coming up, and that's a Deschutes County number.
Yes.
Okay, excuse me, 36, yeah.
And I would be good at leaving like 150.
But we already know, we've already put the money up for 36 of those.
We're operating on this
Well, we
year.
can count that
So we
as
can
a win,
count
right?
it.
We
Right,
count
it's
those
a win.
36
So-
I would
towards our
count it as, I
150.
would somewhere memo it in there, so that we know that we have, you know,
Right.
Progress.
why do we need to?
Make
We're not starting from zero.
Yeah,
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 yeah, we-
well, we started with 150, we've created 36, it leaves us 114 to obtain
Yeah.
in the next.
It's a
whatever this
positive
year was. It's
statement,
a positive statement, I
Yes.
agree.
love positive. Okay, so
All right.
any other questions about then?
I'm still digesting this.
So, Dan never joined us then, did he, today?
I have not seen him join online. I
Okay.
haven't received any correspondence. I haven't checked my email.
I know, I sent an email
Yeah.
to Jeff and he, because I want to set something up in Lapine, and he's not in this week. He's back on the 5th. So I think he's gone the rest of full summer. Anyway,
We were struggling to find dates, weren't we, for future meetings that we all could.
right, yeah, so where, oh, we need to do that too before
Do
we
we
adjourn.
need to approve this budget?
No.
Okay,
I went to the budget
just,
committee last
we're
week.
reviewing it. Okay,
Yeah, if you have any questions,
I don't have
and
any
no
questions.
questions.
there was, okay, and you'll let,
Except for the one Patty mentioned.
right, the $7,500 relocation.
Well, okay, I'll ask a question just based on that alone. And this is an HR question and it's not in my domain, so me to shut up. But since they paid to relocate her and she didn't meet the term of the first year, do you do clawback clauses at all for moving and allocation expenses? Just abundance of curiosity.
Yeah, we're discussing in terms of employment and that very issue now.
According to the paragraph that she signed, I don't know. It says, if you choose to leave your employment with the county within the first 24 months of employment, you will be required to reimburse the county at a prorated share. according to the paragraph.
Okay.
So in case you want to know.
Curiosity answered, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, do we want to meet, how soon?
Well, it looks good for everyone. Well, if we,
Ideally, if we could find it, and I know that this is hard without Mayor Richard here, but if we could find a good time for like a recurring meeting, because I know that last time there was an issue with City Club. This time I know that Tuesdays don't work well for sisters,
I
right?
can go back to Thursdays at our original time if City Club was the only issue on the
Right.
plate.
Yeah, I'm willing to
Thursdays are my best day as well.
forego that.
Thursday, the,
So which Thursday were we doing?
Yeah, and which
We were
time?
doing the third, so how about the second? What's the second Thursday? Is
Second
that
is-
oh, that might be that's the day I have health council.
Yeah.
okay?
That's not,
We can do the third one. We don't have to change things up.
and this month, the city club is at 8:30.
It is, and it's unlikely that they're gonna talk about homelessness again this year. They said that in the last one, so we've got some time.
Okay, so we're looking at the 15th?
We are.
no, the 15th is that the third? Oh, it is. Oh, the retreat for health council is the 8th. Okay, so the 15th. All right, the 15th works.
I'm so sorry to have done this to everybody. To have me like propose a change and then have us go back to the same date feels a little
Okay.
funny.
Thursday,
Well,
the 15th.
Thursday the
Okay.
15th and we're
11:30.
11:30.
We were doing.
We were doing 11 to 12:30, not that that makes any difference.
Or we did 10 too. Don't forget that. We just say on the
Yeah, do we
minutes.
want to cross over lunch or do we want to get it done before lunch or
However you wanna spend your hour and a half with us.
11?
11 to 12:30 on the third Thursday?
Sure, why not?
Works for me.
Yeah, I just whited it out. Now I can put it back in.
Alrighty, I will,
June 15th.
I love it.
I will
Why
get
not?
something
Why
out
not?
before the end of the day.
Sorry.
I go old school.
I love it.
I love it.
I've got
That's
it in my
perfect.
phone, but I need the big print for the important stuff, make sure.
Buzzing me, otherwise I won't.
Yeah, I need
I'll
the-
get a chip implanted that'll buzz me.
So, we want,
I'll make sure that's on everybody's calendars
Okay.
before the end of the day.
Thank you.
okay,
You
so,
bet. Sorry about that.
okay, for the subcommittee governance,
Should we do public comment? For influence?
yeah, well, can we do this first and then?
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Anybody? Yes,
I'd like to comment that, go, you're doing first.
thank you, Tim. Thank you. Okay, does anybody want to serve on governance? And I would love to be there too. Is that okay?
No, I'm gonna tell you now.
Just because you're taller, Kat, you can tell me all you want.
No, you can do governance.
Okay, who wants to be on the leadership then?
I'll do leadership then.
Okay, Kat? Who else wants to?
I'm sorry, this is.
You want me to be on, I can be on
We can do a
anything, it
lot of this
doesn't
through
really
Zoom
matter.
and phone conference and other stuff.
Okay.
I promise to make it easy.
Okay, then strategic, who was gonna do
Wait.
that?
I'll do Stratton and Megan.
And really quick, one thing I wanted to note about the strategic plan, and I think that's something that was missing was like, I heard you earlier say, Counselor Zwicker, that we need to be able to dynamically approach things, and something that is not carved out is that, right? Like, we have all these lists of tasks that the CHRO is expected to perform on, and there isn't anything carved out that says, we have some expectation that you are available, and I wanted to just, like, there are some things that are gonna be happening through the continuum of care that aren't on that list, and I think the expectation is, at least the way that I'm operating, is that the CHR would be a partner in that, right? We'd be expected to help out,
Yes.
and so I would just, if I can't help with that subcommittee and help guide that
Yeah,
discussion.
I think you should.
Okay, cool, I was gonna say, I would love to chat with you guys.
volunteering.
Okay,
Excellent.
Got it.
Okay,
Done.
wait, so just so
Also
we're all on the
Megan and I-
same page, can we
Yes.
go over those one more time?
Okay, so governance is Patty and Megan.
Okay,
Leadership is myself.
okay,
And I think we said strategic plan was Megan and myself.
okay, thank you.
and actually, let me talk to Mayor Richter and see if there's something he wants to
Yeah.
join, because I do think that's important.
Yep.
I will definitely ask him.
Thank you.
And I just want to make myself available. I will help with any and all subcommittee work, any other work that needs to be done, but also if you don't want me in the room, just tell me so.
Oh, we can tell.
Yeah, we'll be talking behind your back, there's no doubt about it.
Okay,
Probably
so at least we
more
only have two people that get together and then we'll see where Dan wants to go and,
Yeah.
you know, maybe he'll wanna do a
And do
couple.
we want to make sure that this happens before our 15th meeting?
Exactly, we do.
I mean, I think we have to finalize, but we should
I
probably
think
meet
we
at least
should-
once
So
before.
no.
touch base and review what that's gonna look like for those tasks for leadership, and that would be helpful, yeah, to line that out, what our goals are for those, and we can get it up and going.
Would it be,
Definitely we need to, we've got a couple weeks to do it.
would it be helpful to have me coordinate that, or do you
Yes,
want me to?
please.
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect.
So
Okay.
could we go to public comments now, please?
James?
Yes,
I can't speak for all service providers, but I just wanted to say in terms of support, I think as long as the service providers feel that they are being heard during this process and have a way to make their input, you have some kind of process as things are going along, to have their input considered, I think you'll find support, because I think all of our service providers will admit life is a lot easier when our elected officials work with us. Not only, and I'm not talking just about money, it's just, you know, we recently learned having the city on board means ODOT will do things that they wouldn't do before.
right.
So that kind of support is really critical. The other thing is, like, you've got this broad plan, but I think for the benefit of everyone, there needs to be some clarity about which things are going to be focused on.
Sure.
Right now, when magic money appears, every service provider is going for it. Because every service provider is doing something good, and there's no clarity about what the end goal really is. Like, the end goal obviously is to end homelessness, but even, you know, what will look like success to the county might be different than what looks like success to the city. And it's obviously very different than what looks like success to the service providers. So I mean, if our goal is clearing off a street somewhere, and I mean, I think that's a legitimate goal for us to have at some point. But, you know, we need to be clear about that, because if the expectation is, oh, we're gonna do something and we're gonna solve China Hat, or we're gonna whatever, if the elected leaders think that's what this is leading to, but the service providers, you know we have an idea of our limits, and often we can't, at least now, you know, do that. So I think there needs to be those really hard questions, and we need that leadership. And if there's some clarity there, I think the service providers will follow, and it'll make it a little easier on them to make decisions like, I'm not going to go for that money because that's really not our priority right now.
Isn't Oasis Village though in a better shot for money now?
Oasis Village is going to be open by January 10th.
January
Oh.
10th, okay.
Very exciting.
That's outstanding.
And
Yeah.
James loves working with me, huh, James?
I think almost everyone in this room has had an argument or cooperation with me at some point.
True, as
You know, I think
statement.
that's
True
fair to say, but I think the hard questions and those difficult discussions are where we get somewhere, and when we avoid those,
Yeah.
we don't make progress.
And I think that he made a very strong and valid point. If the goal is a metric based on behavioral health beds and a certain transition, and their application is not even going to merit review because it's not what we're looking at, having that more clearly stated keeps people from being frustrated and doing unnecessary.
Yeah, and this
headcount.
latest process with the state was messy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, and
Yeah.
everyone else,
Yeah.
but there were goals there.
Yes.
And wow, there were goals there, but it did make it easy to decide, relatively easy, I think, can we meet these goals or not?
And I think that's the way it will be with most of the money
Yes.
that we have.
Yeah.
They will come with strings.
And
We
honestly-
won't have a choice.
Yeah,
how it's
but
gonna be
honestly,
spent.
I've been surprised at how little people have asked for Oasis Village, but other things, it's like, so how do we know you're successful? They want to, I mean, we get the money, but we know what we think is successful, but does the county, does the city, know, I mean, have they made clear what they're gonna accept as success?
Yes,
And,
Yeah.
you know, and
and what does that look like? So if you're gonna be measured on it,
what's it
doing
look
it.
like, and, you know, when is somebody gonna come back and hold me to it?
Yeah.
I mean, we had a beautiful 10-year plan 13, 14 years ago. But there was no accountability. And there was no coming back a year later, 2 years later and saying, why didn't you do this? Or what, you know, what went wrong? What do we have to change now? And it seems like you're considering that now. I mean, but
No, we have to results. Honestly, we're spending millions of dollars and we're spending millions of taxpayer dollars. And I think results are critical. I'm really proud of your program because you actually are thinking of the whole person and you've got a great plan. So that's really good. And I'm hoping that by January 10th, it'll be more than open. You will actually be helping people by then.
well,
And that's the
we're
goal.
hoping that too.
Yeah.
Right now, we're gonna get open.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
everything
should be
will
able to
be-
get open, well, I don't know if you have to have your utilities there, that's the whole nother game.
I mean, ODOT is talking to us, we're trenching the road, not
Okay,
drilling
oh,
down.
Okay,
there might
is there
be someone
anybody else
on-
in the room that, no one else here? Okay, on the,
Peggy.
Over
Peggy?
here.
did you want to say something?
I
Yes,
do. I
could
have
you
a-
say, identify yourself too, I'm so
I
sorry.
certainly can. I have a master's degree in clinical social work. I'm retired and
And your name is?
Peggy Kirkendall.
Okay, thank
And
you.
recently moved to the area from Portland. Before that, we lived in Houston. We've set up nonprofits. We've had homeless people living with us, 2 with severe mental health issues and 2 that were just basically homeless. And we've adopted 2 children that at the ages of 11 and 13 that were affected by severe trauma in childhood. So all that is a kind of an introduction. I'm just gonna tell you point blank what I think is going on here. I want to say to you, the first priority is to prevent further homelessness. That needs to be number 1. That needs to be your number 1 strategic plan beginning today. That today, your cities, your counties are going to start opening up funds. You guys are all 501c4s. That makes folks like me that want to give money, I can give money to that city fund and that's tax deductible.
We don't have a 501c4, but
I think you do. Yes, check your city charter because most cities are 501c4s. Just check your charters and if they aren't, they can become that. Because that opens up tons of opportunities for the cities and the region as a whole. And I've been working right now, I have the financial power of attorney for a disabled friend. And if Bob and I had stepped in and helped her with the rent, she'd be homeless. We've got severe problems that are not only just at the local level, but we've got problems that are going on in Washington, D.C. that actually exacerbate and increase homelessness. And at some point, if you guys want to talk to me about that, I'll definitely talk to you about it. It has to do with policies and procedures that are really destructive. So as you guys are working hard to get people into their homes and, prevent evictions, you need to work on preventing evictions, preventing housing people from losing their houses. Those are things that can be done right now. If you just open up the fund, let people know, let us put money in the fund, that can start. I think the other question that I've had is, what do you want Cairo to do? Is it just an office, a clearinghouse? Is it an agency? Is it both? As a social worker, I think it needs to be an agency. And the reason why I'm saying that, it doesn't need to replace any of the other agencies and nonprofit agencies out there. But there is a role for an agency to be able to do intakes So when people call that are needing housing, there's an intake person. There also needs to be a situation of staffing. There needs to be an agency that makes sure that the other agencies have the kind of staff and the kind of experience it's gonna take. Because at the first point, in a social worker, when a social worker meets a client, we normally do a full intake. We do, I mean, it's big. It takes an hour, 2 hours. It's big. We get to know the person, we get to know the whole thing. But then the second part is case management. And I think Cairo should be considered as the intake hub. And then you talk to the other nonprofits and find out what their particular training is, their particular vision is. And for those who want to do case management, which most of them are already doing, by the way, they're already doing case management, it just may not be called that. Then you can assign people to these various agencies and that are in different parts of this county and region. But for right now, it's just so chaotic. It's hard to follow. I've been trying to follow this. We've lived here a year and a half and it has been really confusing. And I think you guys need to very definitely get a website up. I think you need to change the name. I think you need to change the name of Cairo. It's not a particularly good name to find on the website. I had to call 3 or 4 people, agencies, to find out how to even get here. I think you need to also get a really good communications director hired to really start telling the public what you're doing and having interviews on the radios, having interviews with the newspapers, doing spots on television to let people know what's going on. The public is behind you. They want something done. They just don't know how to help you help them. But if they knew that there was a fund that they could contribute to, that you guys or somebody was going to take that money and put it towards preventing any future homelessness over the next 6 months, I think you'd see a lot of money pouring in. That's what they want. They just want people helped immediately. They don't want to see anyone else fall between the cracks.
Peggy, thank you so much for those comments. I really appreciate you bringing your perspective here. We actually have maybe some other people online that want to say, and I have a 3:30 that I have to get to. That I know it's really important. So anyway, but I thank you so much for coming in, and we'll check on that 501c4 ruling and see if that's something our cities have. Anyone else? Does anyone else?
It's easy to get
There's
if
a
you
couple
don't have
some
it.
online.
Yes, okay. Can we identify the, Kevin, thank you.
Hi there, thank you. Hold on, my video's about to pop up. Well, for some reason, my video's not come up, so I'll just do it without the video. My name is Kevin Dahlgren. I've been working in homeless services for 28 plus years, primarily in Portland, Oregon. I've run very successful programs in helping cities reduce homelessness to a point that became very, very manageable. I was recently in Bend, Oregon, over a 5-day period and did extensive outreach in China Hat, Dirt World, Clawson Road, Hunnell Road, all those places, and learned a lot. What I saw was a lot of addiction, a lot of mental illness, overdoses, and a lot of people talking to me about the suicides, the arsons, and the person-to-person crimes. Basically, there's definitely a humanitarian crisis going on really just beneath the surface of Bend, Oregon. Because when you arrive in Bend, you don't really see the homeless problem. It's well hidden, but when you spend time doing the outreach at night downtown or in the woods is where you really see the tragedy. And I just wanted to offer a few suggestions. First of all, and I 100% agree, you need a by name list. It needs to happen today. To end this crisis, it starts with understanding the problem. And that means knowing exactly how many people in your community, what their stage of change is, whether they're going to accept help or not. That is step one. You have to know what we're dealing with. And outreach is key. I will say is I interviewed dozens of homeless people and spoke to many more that told me outreach is very uncommon there. And in fact, I did not meet one homeless person who said nobody has ever approached them and offered housing. They were approached for other reasons, offering tents and other things, but not like the long-term solution. And we need metrics. Metrics are what's going to solve this crisis. And I think your community has a real opportunity. I absolutely love Deschutes County. I've been visiting it for decades. It's my favorite place in the world to hike. And all it's going to take is a solid collaboration with the city and the county. And you do this, you're going to be the model that all other cities in the country will follow. And that is exciting to me. I really sense this strong sense of hope too when I was there, that Bend is really ripe and ready for a real change. And it's something I really want to help you all with. And so I want to commend you for that. And I know emotions are high. Homelessness is a very hot button issue. And anytime, like I know this firsthand, is anytime I make a decision, it's hated by half and loved by the other half. That's just the reality of working in homeless services. But collaborating doesn't mean you always have to agree 100%. It just means that you all agree that there's got to be a way to work together to end this crisis. That's where it starts. And I promise you, if we focused on pouring more funds towards the outreach, that is the step one. And you're going to see an immediate difference because outreach serves a couple purposes. The most important being it builds trust. Trust is key. Without trust, the fact is they're gonna say no to you to the day they die. And I promise you, a majority of the people you interact with will say no to a shelter. It's because there's a mistrust in the system. We have to build that trust back. There's a lot of addiction and there's a lot of mental illness and a lot of ambivalence. So that is step one. Trust becomes hope. And once they have hope is when we're able to truly help them. I have done this in multiple cities and just returning from your beautiful, beautiful county, I just see a lot of potential and it's something I am more than happy to help with in any way because I think your particular community, again, has a real opportunity of just showing the rest of the United States how it gets done. And I just wanted to say that. Again, my name is Kevin Dahlgren, and I really appreciate you giving me the time to speak.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Okay, is there anyone else with a raised hand today? We're just at the end of our. Okay, Sarah?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sarah and I live here in Bend. I had the pleasure of meeting Kevin Dahlgren this past week and hearing about his outreach here in Bend. But what really impressed me about Kevin were his prior achievements in cities around Oregon, the Western United States, even as far as Hawaii. I don't think anyone can argue that we're not seeing positive change in our homeless situation here in Deschutes County. The number of homeless individuals is growing, reflected in our PIC count and easily seen around our local streets and neighborhoods. The one thing that has changed, though, is that frustration is bubbling up and becoming a huge talking point for neighbors, friends, and business owners. People are desperate for someone to help create meaningful change now, not through the 5-year plan that you've come up with, which eerily mirrors San Francisco's 2017 to 2022 strategic plan to end homelessness. Please Google it, give it 5 minutes of your time. You guys are setting yourselves up to follow in San Francisco's footsteps at this point. Finally, on a basic level of fundamental adult maturity, I hope that even if people on this board are resistant to change or outsiders, that giving Kevin the respect he's due and the chance to come talk to local officials and the public about his knowledge, strategies, and successes he's had with the homeless populations for the last 3 decades can come to fruition. We're fortunate that someone with a proven track record of success has offered his services up to our cities and county. Why not extend the olive branch to someone who may be able to offer beneficial counsel and a fresh point of view? I can't imagine there's anything controversial about learning something new from someone whose breadth of knowledge and depth of experience far outshadows perhaps some of yours. It'd be awfully close-minded and frankly embarrassing to have our elected officials and this board flat out reject learning from people with different points of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, could you identify your last name, please, for the minutes?
Happily, Ladwig.
It looks like there's one more.
One more, please.
Thank you.
Who's
Yep, you
left?
bet.
Thank you, Sarah. Is that Linda?
Yes, it is.
Linda? Linda Bear?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you for letting me speak today. Again, I'm one of your regulars. I've wanted to, first of all, express my appreciation and gratitude for making the difficult decision to part ways with your executive director. I know that wasn't easy, but many in the community, including myself, feel it was a necessary step. And as what Mayor Keebler said, in order for this program to be successful, the Choro office, this change needed to be made. And I agree with her 100%. I wanted to say that I feel contributing resources via strategic planning and manpower to programs and services that have been deployed for the last several years here in the cities and in Deschutes County, quite frankly, for me, appears to be a fool's errand. The limited available data, PIT count, OD counts, and whatever other limited data that we're working off is showing that our approach is not working. We need a new approach to solving this problem of homelessness. And rather than putting more Band-Aids on the wounds, I would like to see someone like Kevin Dahlgren come to the area, complete a full assessment of our homeless population so that he can actually come up with recommendations and an actionable plan where we can start making progress right away and not wait for a year or 2 years or 3 years. I have studied this man's work extensively. I had the honor of spending 4 days in the field with him. I walked every inch of the China Hat, Dirt World, Hunnell Road, Clausen Road, all around town. I was present for every single one of his interviews. I know that some people made claims that the interviews were staged and they were actors, and that is just not, there's not 1 ounce of truth to that. I know some people got very threatened by his work here and were caught off guard by his work here, but I believe it's critical to have somebody like Kevin, who has been doing this for nearly 30 years, has extensive history and resources and experience, to come here and give us a boost up. I think that our strategic plan is, obviously you have to meet benchmarks for the governor's office to meet the audit, but we need answers now so that our community at large and the homeless population can get the help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Is there anyone else with the raised hand? Wonderful. Okay, I believe we have a meeting set up. Nick, did you want to say something?
I just want to say to the board, thank you for a very productive meeting today, including the very thoughtful public comments. We have clear direction going forward with the 3 subcommittees. And just to give you the confidence that your staff, your local government staff, we're collaborating, we're coordinating on a regular basis for a strong path forward. And we'll look forward to providing updates with you as we coordinate with you to prepare for the June 15th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Kevin's application for the executive